fascinating because rams, while of course they have sociodynamics, presumably there isn't a pressure independent of reproductive pressure to be a gay ram or a straight ram.
And I guess I left off the kicker, which is Chuck eventually dissected the preoptic areas of these various rams, and he found a difference between the preoptic area of gay rams and straight rams, a difference in how they process testosterone. In exactly that part of the brain, the preoptic area, where Simon saw a difference between gay and straight men. So there may be something about the hypothalamus, the preoptic area, that has something to do with orientation, if we're talking about an organism as complicated enough to have an orientation, including sheep.
This is a particularly nice moment, not just for this episode, but for the entire podcast arc, because there are these moments that come up every once in a while where a larger principle shows up in a new way that I think is really important for people to understand. Across neuroscience, we see this push-pull, right? A flexor muscle like the bicep, when it flexes, the tricep relaxes. When the tricep flexes, the bicep relaxes, these antagonistic relationships. You see this in the hunger circuit. I mentioned one earlier. Like hunger and feeling full they're like a push-pull. They're like a seesaw. And you see this over and over and over again. It's a very consistent theme of brain function. And you said something that I was not aware of, but makes perfect sense. I just wasn't aware that there were, data at the level you described, which is clearly there's an appetitive aspect to sex behavior. Heterosexual males wanting to have sex with females, heterosexual females wanting to have sex with males, and so on, every derivation there. There's a desire. In species where there's strong pheromone and odor determination and receptivity stuff gets played out that way, it looks one way. In humans, it may have some of that, but it plays out different way. Receptivity is communicated differently, although odor may be very important in ways we don't quite fully understand. But this idea that there's an aversive aspect to it, right? I think this is important, and it's something that I have not heard discussed before. And I think that sociologically it has relevance because I think that there's so many different aspects to the notion that our species, humans, come in gay and straight and perhaps bisexual varieties. We know that's true.
Clearly.
But there is this not uncommon theme whereby many people, I can only say many people, right? Not all, that the concept of mating with same sex is aversive to them. And that has shaped a lot of the landscape around this. And I'm not trying to get political here. It's just, I think it's worth acknowledging that may be a real phenomenon too. I'm not trying to justify mistreatment of anybody, but I think that we're never going to get where we want to go as a species, societally, until we really at least understand the biology and how to work with it. And so the idea that same-sex sex, right, would be aversive as an idea to people. Some people are like, oh, well, they haven't been educated. Okay, perhaps, but there may be a biological basis for that.
I think the data are still out, but I think to me at least, it's pretty clear that for men at least, there's an asymmetry here. That experiment where I said, who wants to have sex with George Clooney? Half the population says sure, the other half of the population never. If we reverse the experiment, what percentage want to have sex with Margot Robbie? And yeah, half the population, the men would see her as a very desirable sexual partner. But, the women too many women would at least consider the idea of having sex with her. And we know there are plenty of women who are straight in one part of their lives, and later they fall in love with a woman, and now they feel like they're gay, right? So women are more plastic in terms of their sexual longings and sexual orientation than men are. I'll be a little more specific. I think it's among males where sometimes, for many males, not all, there's an aversive idea, that the idea of having sex with the same-sex partner is aversive. Now, of course, context matters, right? There's same sex happening in prisons all the time when, if the conditions are enough. And I don't know where that aversive component came from. It could be that our society, maybe it's all socially inculcated, again, before we're aware of it at all. But I think there's also at least the possibility that there's a biological component to it. And I think that's what Chuck was getting at, in that here's this difference in the brain. He doesn't know when the difference happened in the preoptic areas, but it seems to correlate with this idea that maybe these gay rams, no, they're not interested in having sex with her. They're, only
It's aversive to them.
It's aversive, yeah. There's no other way to. I don't know any other way to explain how they choose never once mount a female.
Yeah, I feel like that the acknowledgement of an aversive pathway for sexual partner choice is as important as the acknowledgement of biological correlates of homosexuality.
Yeah.
Because if this sort of conversation is ever to advance past the sort of like, okay, what's okay to say now that we're willing to say now, trust in science disappears. I really believe that. Now, of course, the problem is that people leverage fragments of what they hear in order to make arguments in favor of whatever stance they have. And that's the complication. That's why I like long form, because no matter what gets pulled out, we can go back to the full conversation.
Right. And this makes you old-fashioned, because that's not the world. I mean, our world seems to be hurtling towards this.
Yeah. I mean,
world of snippets.
People will notice that we have not used the word gender. We're talking about biological sex and sex the act. And we're talking about male versus female partner choice. And we're talking about a desire for one or the other and an aversion to one or the other. And I think the aversion piece is an important theme. So here's a hypothesis. If I can come do a sabbatical, I'm due for a sabbatical at some point. It may be that in male humans that there's a pathway or a molecule that serves as an aversive to sex with other men circuit, peptides, neurons, et cetera, that suppresses sexual desire and activates some level of disgust. I'm going to just say it bluntly. Might not be the same disgust that they would experience to something more aversive, but okay. Right. And that in women, there is no such pathway. There's either desire for women or desire for men. But as you said, statistically, women are more open, on average, to same-sex interactions. And it may be because there's no aversive signal, or the aversive signal has a less robust circuit.
To me, that would explain these differences, these sex differences in who people are willing to have sex with. Your hypothesis fits the data.
I mean, it is true that in the early 90s, for instance, when the first gay characters were on television, like the first Real World, I'm really dating myself here, and subsequent characters started to dismantle some of the stereotypes that had been seen in like comedies in the 80s and things like that of the effeminate gay man, right? What you saw was indeed that heterosexual women, as far as we know, seem to be more like generally accepting of gay men before heterosexual men embrace that as typical.
That's my impression too. I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah, and then there's a societal shift, and then it sort of becomes like, like if you I spend some time on X, formerly known as Twitter, right? And there's some gay political accounts, and you just kind of notice like it's just people are like comfortable with it. Men and women seem to be comfortable with that, right? I mean, of course, you don't see a lot of attacks now. That's very different than what you would have observed, for instance, in like the late 80s, early 90s, right? Anyway, I think these are important biological phenomenon, this notion of an aversive pathway. You could imagine where societal standards or community standards or household standards might, amplify or reduce like the sort of expression of these things.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, cultures, can amplify or reduce that component. The question is, to what extent? I mean, and I don't think we know.
One thing that we haven't talked about, and it is a small percentage of people, but it's something that people think about, is this notion of sort of neither here nor there, kind of mixed sex, right? Is there a biological correlate of that? A graduate student my year, when you were my professor,
Yes.
Nicola Osipka, who was already famous for training dogs for the Beastmaster show. It's amazing, and had very well-behaved dogs that she would bring everywhere with her. Studied a species of mole in Tilden Park that could transdifferentiate its testes into ovaries and back again. And I thought, well, that's like alien, weird levels of stuff. But she would occasionally go over to UCSF when babies were born that were sort of, back then they called them, no one uses this language now, pseudo-hermaphrodite.
Yes.
What is the deal with exposure to prenatal androgens and neither clearly here nor there a genitalia?
Yeah, so in most of those cases, we're talking about congenital adrenal hyperplasia, also known as CAH. And the congenital means it's present at birth, and the adrenal hyperplasia is referring to the fact that the adrenal glands are slightly larger. And the reason they're slightly larger in this case is because these are individuals where the fetus itself is not able to make some of the adrenal steroids that are important for staying healthy. And so the brain detecting, hey, where are the adrenal steroids that we need here, drives the pituitary to tell the adrenal gland, hey, we need more steroids. The adrenal gland gets the message, it hypertrophies, but the machinery isn't there to make those steroids. And so instead, the adrenal gland makes testosterone and other androgens. And actually, this can happen in either XX or XY individuals. And in XY individuals, people might not notice. But in XX individuals, what that means is that prenatally, her genitalia are being exposed to more testosterone than is typical. And so under the influence of this extra testosterone, the clitoris may grow to be bigger than the typical clitoris. In some cases, in extreme cases, the phallus looks like a penis. And the skin around that area that would normally form the labia, again, there might be enough testosterone that it starts to look like a scrotum, except, of course, there are no testes inside there because this is an XX individual. So these individuals are identified at birth, typically, especially in XX individuals. And there's an easy treatment, which is, they can't make, you do the test and they can't make adrenal steroids, so we'll give them some. And so for the rest of their lives, they take adrenal steroids orally and get the benefits of that. And that shuts off the hyperactive adrenal gland so that it shuts off the role of the output of testosterone. So this is what's known as an intersex phenotype. And yes, you're right. And in the older literature, they were sometimes known as pseudo-hermaphrodite, with the idea being that a hermaphrodite is an individual that can function and reproduce either as a male or female. And so supposedly they were pseudo because they can't do that, because they have only ovaries. Well, you can imagine, first of all, being called hermaphrodite, nobody liked that. And if you ask them, well, is it better if I put this pseudo at the beginning? Does that make you feel like you're being less stigmatized? No. But a much more accurate description is to say that it's intersex. They have a phallus that's somewhere between a clitoris and a penis, and the skin around there is sort of like a scrotum and sort of like labia. So in the old days, once this got recognized, it was standard procedure to tell the parents, this is an emergency. We need to do cosmetic surgery. We need to do surgery to make this little girl look like all the other little girls. Sometimes the surgery was, there could sometimes be successful or not. And indeed, they knew how to make her look like other girls. But many of those intersex folks, when they grew up, were pretty angry that someone had done this surgery on them that wasn't needed medically, right? They were already taking care of the problem with the exogenous adrenal steroids. And so who asked you to deal with to do surgery on my clitoris? In some cases, the tip of the clitoris was missing, and so these women grew up and were anorgasmic because they couldn't get the stimulation that they normally would have